And we're live.
Good afternoon. Hi there. How are you? My name is Pat Campbell, radio talk show host from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And you are listening to the Rational Male 101, episode 48, The Truth About Nice Guys. And I am joined by the godfather of the manosphere, the cult leader himself, Rollo Tomasi, the Rational Male. Rollo, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Good show. Good show Friday, and for both you and me, I guess, with the Tate show, and then your show.
Absolutely.
Both of those were fantastic.
Well, the Tate show, I caught a good chunk of that, and that really is, I think, the launching pad for today's show, because he talked a lot about nice guys, the way they treat people, and jerks, and why it is that jerks seem to get more women than the nice guys do. So we wanted to sort of segue into that whole conversation today.
Sure.
So let's start with something simple here. Why is it that women claim they want a nice guy, but they always gravitate toward or go for the bad boy?
Sure. Well, the first thing is I think one of the reasons why the show that I did with Tate on Friday was so popular is because we're kind of getting back into some of these older. These are the basics. We talk about Red Pill 101. This is basic Red Pill stuff. We've been having this discussion. I think I've had this discussion really since like 2001, somewhere around there. And even before that, guys have always been asking these questions. Why is there a guy that women want to have sex with, and why is there a guy that women want to marry? Right? Well, there's sort of the nice guy, and then there's the jerk. And the old adage, I think, I think even Royce wrote something about this, is chicks dig jerks. They just dig jerks. They like that. I won't say arrogance, but there's an arrogance that goes along with it. There's a cockiness that goes along with it. And really, I think the base reason for it is because, well, first of all, there's the dualistic nature of women's mating strategy. They're looking for they're looking for an amalgam of a guy who is the hot jerk, the guy who is the good, father for the sexy sons theory. And then there's the guy who's the provider. We've talked about this a million times, which is the, alpha seed and beta need. And I'm being nice on this one. And so there's this need for superior genetics, and there's a need for superior provisioning, security, protection, long-term investment. So the thing is that's the split. That's when women decide whether or not they want to be with one guy or another. It's not that women aren't looking for a nice guy. They would probably love to have that. But the problem is that they're aroused by the guy who is the jerk. And the qualities that make that guy the jerk is what really triggers a lot of women's emotional response when it comes to dealing with a guy. So like a lot of guys will take this as this is just sort of a fallout, really, I think, from social media and the internet. But a lot of guys will take it to the extreme. They'll say, well, Rollo, I have to be a jerk, or they'll watch what I did with Tate and just having this conversation with him, and they'll see somebody like Andrew Tate, and then we'll say, well, you mean I got to be like that? You mean I got to be an asshole? You mean I got to be I have to take it to the extreme. And in some cases, yes, that might be what you have to do. But my theory has always been this, and if you look in the description here, I have 4 different essays that I've written about this over the years. And my theory goes like something like this. If you imagine a spectrum, okay? And on one end of that spectrum, you've got the guy who is sort of the doormat, blue pill, beta guy, nice guy, what we would call an emotional tampon, the guy who wants to, maybe a male feminist, the guy who wants to identify as best he possibly can to be more feminine because he believes that likes attract, and he's just the kind of guy who's just he's a good dude, he's a good guy. He has his heart in the right place. Like, he wants to be serviceable because he's been taught this his entire life. And then on the opposite side of that, you've got a guy who is borderline abusive. Now, I'm not going to say this is, I'm not saying like you should be abusive. I'm just saying, let's just stop the train right before we get to abusive. This is the guy who is your stereotypical jerk, the stereotypical asshole, the guy that the woman starts looking for when it's that time of the month, when it is when she's ovulating, when she's looking for the guy who is displaying traditionally, conventionally masculine features, but also when I talk about that, when we talk about like the different sides of hypergamy and how like ovulatory shift works for women, we tend to focus primarily on like the way the guy looks. He's got to have the V taper. He's got to have the 6-pack abs. He's got to be what we would, anybody would describe as being idealistically the example of conventionally masculine physical beauty for women. But we never really look at what are the attitudes and what are the behaviors that accompany that. And so why I'm setting this in terms of a spectrum here is because somewhere along those lines, you've got the guy who's the stereotypical a-hole and you got the stereotypical doormat beta. Somewhere along the lines, a guy fits in somewhere on that spectrum. And I would say for the last maybe 3 or 4 generations, we have conditioned, engineered really at least 3 generations of men who tend to opt for that side, for the beta side, for the blue pill nice guy side of that spectrum, because for a very long time we have convinced our boys that they need to be more like girls. They need to be more in touch with their feminine side. They need to be more sensitive. They need to be more supportive. They need to be serviceable. They need to be a utility for women. And the way that they do that is they have to prove how nice they are, how good they are. I would be the perfect boyfriend if only you would just see. And here's all the things that I can bring to the table. Why is it that that guy is not getting the play that the guy who is a unemployed asshole jerk is getting from women, yet women still say that that's what they're looking for? So I've got a lot of theories about this as well, as you might guess, but why do you think that is? Why do you think that like women will say one thing and mean another, and then their behavior, the medium is the message, right? Yeah. And then go for the guy who is
their behavior always betrays them. It's my favorite saying, don't listen to what people say, watch what they do. Why? Because their action always betrays them. I've thought about this a lot. And when it comes to women, there is something, the person that's being the jerk or the asshole, there is something inside them. They feel it's almost like a competitive thing. They have to prove him wrong. Does that make sense to you?
It's a challenge. There's a challenge.
No, it is the challenge. This is the one. Mr. Nice Guy was too easy. He'll do anything I ask him to do. He's never going to say no to me. That's boring. That's bland. I want a challenge. The jerk is a challenge. And there was one of the that website Rational Male Quotes, which is not maintained by you but by a friend of yours. He said something to the effect of that confidence comes from having options. That's what Tate's got. Tate is a cocky SOB. Why? Because he's got options. He's got game. He knows it. Everybody else knows it.
Yeah, exactly what we're talking about. The who was I talking about this with? Maybe it was with you, but the thing about Tate, yeah, you're right. Confidence is derived from options. I've got at least 2 different essays about that. A lot of people tend to think that confidence is like when we give just basic advice. If you listen to Tony Robbins, if you listen to any kind of advice coach, even women will say this too. Even women who want to give advice to guys, they say you need to be more confident. Or just be yourself and the right girl will come around, right? All you got to do is find some confidence. You got to dig down deep inside yourself and just pull that dip into the well of confidence that's already inside you. And it's like, it's just a bunch of crap is what it is, because confidence is derived from options. And the way you get those options is you change something. You have to work towards it. You have to in some way change your conditions in order to generate those options. You have to be willing to experiment. You have to be willing to take chances and take risks. And that's another thing that the jerk has that the nice guy doesn't, is the jerk is willing to take risks. The jerk is willing to experiment with a woman's emotions by being a jerk, by being the guy that she wants to get with. Now, of course, there has to be an initial arousal there in the first place. And you'll understand what I'm talking about here is I separate attraction from arousal. So when we say, what does a woman really want? And every woman jumps up and they'll put every last one of these things that I'm about to say, you'll find in most women's online dating profiles. They'll say, I want a guy who's funny. I want a guy who's intelligent. I want a guy who's educated. I want a guy who is, loves his mother. I want a guy who's, funny. I want a guy who's, has a nice heart. He's got to have a loving heart, this kind of stuff. And when you ask a woman what it is that she finds attractive in a man, she is thinking in terms of long-term relationships. She's thinking in terms of what is the kind of guy that I would want to spend the rest of my life with, right? Who would be, and who's gonna argue with that, right? So I want a guy who is going to be sweet and love my children and go to church with me and have a good job and be a good supporter. And so what most women do in that situation is they sort of enumerate, I guess, all of the qualities that they're looking for from the beta buck side of the hypergamous equation. Now, if you were to ask a woman what is arousing to you, that is a different story, because you're asking a question, you're asking for qualities based on what a woman finds hot, what she finds sexually arousing, what it is about a guy that a guy that she would want to get with. Now, notice how I first go to the qualities of like physique, right? There's the look side of it. And so I'll say, well, he's got to have a V taper. He's got to have a nice butt. He's got to have biceps. He's got to have 6-pack abs. He's got to have chiseled chin. He's got to have all that, conventionally masculine stuff. But what else is there? Because all of that stuff doesn't make any difference if the guy has an incongruent, inauthentic personality that goes along with that. So if a guy, there are plenty of homosexual men who have all of those qualities. They have all of that physique and that beauty. But the reason that they're disqualified is because their behaviors and their attitudes and who they are inside is not congruent with what a woman expects of a guy that has that particular look. So that's where the dark triad traits come in. And I was just talking, I just looked in the comments here and somebody says, do you think that Andrew Tate is dark triad? And I would say he would definitely score high on a few of those dark triad traits, which is Machiavellianism, sort of an arrogance, sort of a cockiness. But also he has the capacity to back up a lot of what he says too. So there's the authenticity aspect that goes along with that. But those are some of the qualities that women seek out when they're talking about somebody who is arousing to them. So if you look at the alpha seed side of hypergamy and then the beta need side, the beta need side tends to be qualities that are long-term. The alpha seed side is short-term breeding opportunities. I'm in my ovulatory phase and I want to get pregnant. That's the impetus behind that side of it. So of course, would women like to have that equally represented in the same guy? Yeah, I'm sure that they would. But today, like I keep saying, is most women aren't even really looking for that in the same guy. They separate it out. So there is one guy for one thing and another guy for another thing.
And you can't get the two together because that's as rare as a unicorn.
Well,
right?
You want to, yeah, I was going to say, you're talking about a unicorn. Now this, if people who are going to listen to this are going to see this, if you think that this is a parallel to what's known as the madonna-whore complex, yes, you're right. Men are looking for a woman who's a freak in the bed and would also make a good mother for their children. And so there's
all I can think of is that chick that was walking down the strip in Vegas, dressed up as Catwoman with the two boys.
Their sons, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was crazy. I was just going to say I think it didn't used to be this way, okay? Primarily under the old social contract, the nice guy probably won out more times than not prior to the sexual revolution, prior to the to unfettering hypergamy in our society, in Western culture as it is today. A guy with a good job, if he was cute and he was hot as well, that was icing on the cake for a woman. But it was primarily, is this guy a good long-term, bet for me? And so if a guy had, like we've talked about, we've talked about the socioeconomic aspects of this back in the day. Prior, let's say prior to 1965, a guy could go to work, go to one job, get a pension, and his paycheck was enough to support a family of like 2 kids and a wife.
Right.
and you didn't have to worry about those kinds of things because the economy was different and everything was working differently back then. But now that's no longer the case, and along with that, women are now able to provide for themselves, and they are becoming more and more independent of men, and as a result of that, they don't look for those guys based on the same context that they used to. So whereas before a woman might say, oh, well, I can't wait to get married, I can't wait to have kids, the age of first marriage was a lot earlier. Right now, the age of first marriage is something like 26, 27, somewhere around there. Whereas like back in the 60s, I think it was like 19 or 20 for a woman to get into a relationship or to, a long-term thing. And then, of course, the sexual revolution came, and then, the free love movement in the 70s and everything else that came along. And, now we arrive where we're at. So that's the real long way, I'm sorry to say, is, women are no longer looking for that combination in guys, or they don't expect to find it anymore. So when they're going out to go party with their friends, or they're at a certain age, like say in their party years, they're looking for a different guy than they are looking for when they get to be 29, 30, 31 years old. I'm getting little clicks in my audio right now.
From me or from you?
I don't know. I don't know if it's me or it's
you broke up a little bit there.
Oh, did I?
A couple minutes ago, but not now.
Yeah. But so, anyways, I was just gonna say is that they. So if you look at two different ends of the spectrum, there you've got the asshole guy and you've got the nice guy. Most guys today, because of the sexual revolution and because we have feminized men so thoroughly, most guys lean very heavily towards the nice guy side of things. So when we talk about guys who are like that 80%, those are the guys who are the demographic of men that women rate as being unattractive. And we see this in like books like Dataclism, or just the stats that we see from from the just the data that we have in the internet age, which we didn't have prior to any of this. But now we can sort of track this. We can sort of see what it is that women are opting for. Most guys, particularly guys who get really nihilistic about these things, they'll say, well, go look at what happens on Tinder, or women only just want the hot guy. They only want the guy with the six-pack abs. And unless you're in that top 5%, not even 20%, unless you're in that top 5%, you're not going to get anywhere today. And they use that as sort of this gloom and doom, scenario for themselves. And it becomes sort of an excuse to give up. But that's only based on the visual. That's only based on that, that quick, is this guy attractive or is he not? Is this guy hot or is this guy not? And then from that perspective, yeah, I mean, I can understand why people would say, well, women are only interested in the physical. They're only interested in the short term. But once you get past that, once you get into that, what we call a sarge, or once you get into the approach, or once you get into all of this, let me see, I'm just going to turn that speaker off. I keep getting a click. Maybe it's me. Once you get into that, what comes after that? What are the traits that is going to keep that woman interested? Because, I know I have plenty of friends who are actually really good looking guys, but I mentioned one in my book, actually, this guy, Jake, who was a very good looking dude, but still had this very beta, what I used to call AFC attitude when it came to women. And so he could attract them, but he couldn't actually start anything else with them, because he would go puppy dogs and ice cream cones. He would go very emotional tampon after that. And so that was very self-defeating for
I love that emotional tampon. I want to be your emotional tampon.
Yeah.
Let me just jump in on this real quick, because I'm thinking about myself, the way I was raised, and I would think that most people who you would label tradcons were raised in a similar fashion. My dad, from a very early age, gosh, I was maybe like 10 or 11, told me and my brothers, I want you to treat women, or girls in that case, the same way you would want people to treat your sister. And I mean, that was grilled into us. And my dad did put mom up on a pedestal, and he put women on a pedestal. I didn't grow up in a household where, I saw my dad yelling at my mother, or berating my mother, or physically striking my mother. In fact, everything that I was raised with is you're never supposed to be like that around women.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how a real man, there we go, right? How a real man behaves.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trained to be a nice guy. And I would feel like a bit of a dick if I was anything but, because then I've got all this programming, years and years of programming telling me that's not the way you're supposed to treat people, especially women, right? Because it's like in religion, what does it do? Double enforces it.
Yes, exactly. I get where you're coming from, because there's sort of this old school, old social contract idea that, you never hit a girl, right? You carry her books home from school. You do, you make yourself serviceable. If she's got a flat tire, you go, hey, wait, I'll fix that for you. You hold the door open. All these characteristics that women now today call chivalry, right? It was, oh, well, what happened to the chivalrous guys? Where's the nice guys? When women get to that epiphany phase, that's when they start thinking, where's the nice guys? And why are they doing that at that point? Because they're looking for a guy who is attractive, but not necessarily arousing. She's looking for a guy who would be a good long-term partner to start a family and do all this stuff. But usually when you hear that, and it's, first of all, it's meant to be a shaming tactic for men, but it's this, with this understanding that she's broadcasting her need for a nice guy at this stage of her life. On Wednesday's show, on my show, on my Q&A show, I had a video of this woman who was, I think, probably 30 or 31. It was just a quick hit video. And she was trying to explain all this. She was saying, well, now when we get to be 30 years old and we're looking for guys who are just like you, and that's you, and you're the guy who's now 30, 31 years old, and you've got everything in a row for yourself, and you're on your way up, and you become a lot more attractive. But you're attractive at that age for a reason. You're attractive there because you represent something that she needs at that particular time.
There's a sense of urgency. She's in her epiphany phase.
Right. She's
the same chick that wouldn't give you a second look when you were 22. Now all of a sudden, because the herd's thin and she's up against the clock, the wall's getting closer. All of a sudden, you deserve a second look.
So here's what happens though. Like I get what you're saying as far as nice or being, people are going to want to split hairs in this, and I know what the conversation is going to be in the comments of this video after we're done here, but it's going to be, well, what is nice? What is the difference between being a guy who is taking care of business and is a good alpha guy, but is still sort of dedicated to an old school and an old social contract way of thinking, because obviously that worked back in the old social contract. Right. But what's the difference between that guy and the guy who's just the doormat, the guy who's just like, yes, dear? Because let me ask you this question about your dad. Was your dad the guy who in the family, was he the one who made all the decisions? Was he the primary driver of the car with respect to your family?
Right? With the exception of finances, because my dad is one of these guys. My mother is just like a genius with money. She ought to be teaching a master's course in finance at a college, because she was able to take the little bit of money that we had, and raise a family of 13 kids, which was insane. She worked. That's one of the things that my dad really resented even until his dying days, is that mom had to work. He felt that he should have been able to provide for the whole family. And, when I was younger, growing up, there was still a lot of parents where the mom would stay at home. And or if they worked like part-time. My mom had to work because it took a lot of money to feed everybody. A lot of kids. So but other than finances, everybody knew that's where the buck stops with dad. And I would say and do things, and my brothers would too. With my mom, we'd say things to my mother that we would never say to dad, because you'd be buying your ticket out. One of those deals.
Right. So he was like, I would say, just from your description here, and I know lots of other guys like this. A lot of guys will, like, when I wrote this one essay called Blue Pill Alphas. Right. And it's not people want to think that those two things are mutually exclusive. Well, if you're red pill, then you've got to be alpha.
That's exactly what he was. He was a blue pill alpha. Yes.
Right. So it is entirely possible to be a nice guy and still be red pill, or be a nice guy and be blue pill. It's not mutually exclusive. It's entirely possible for a guy who's very alpha and very in control of the situation and understand, men are men and women are women. Like my own father would probably be somewhere along those lines too. Right. But they believed in that old school this is what you put this in, and this is what you get out. And those rules no longer apply right now. So yeah, I when I talk about a blue pill alpha, I'm not coming down on anybody who is like this. I'm just saying that that's just it's just in the description right now. And so you can be on top of your game, but still be very blue pill, still be very. And I also need to sort of make a distinction here between like when I talk about alpha or beta, or we talk about nice guy and jerk, those are abstract terms. Again, people always say, well, I don't believe in alpha, I don't believe in beta, blah, blah, blah. You use a false dichotomy with respect to alpha and beta. Okay, well, those are abstract terms. They are they're placeholders for concepts. Same thing applies to nice guy and jerk. Okay. So when we think of a jerk, just consider that as a concept so we can move on to bigger concepts here.
I got a question. I got a question on the jerk thing though, because you know me, I'm either windshield wipers all the way on or they're off. There is no in between. Mm-hmm. So what is the difference between being a jerk and being an all-out asshole?
Yeah. Well,
is it degrees or what?
Well, I would say, like, I remember when I was talking about the spectrum, I said we kind of need to stop short of the guy who's abusive, because there's something wrong there. If a woman keeps going back to a guy who is physically abusive to her, and she's the sort of the battered wife or whatever, there's something else there besides.
You could be an asshole without being physically abusive.
Yeah. Now that physically abusive asshole still has a lot of those dark triad traits, but he's taking it to another level. So I'm not saying that women are always going to just go back to guys who are abusive assholes. Well, usually that what happens in those situations when a woman keeps going back to that abuse, it's because she has something going on with her, and you get this negative feedback loop between the two of them. That's not what I'm getting into right here, because that's sort of like in the area of being abuse, but also like almost like psychosis, like each one of them has something else that's going on. But there are traits that make a guy more on the jerk side of the spectrum. Certainly self-centered, certainly self-important. A guy who would be on the jerk side of things would definitely have mental point of origin. Like, his thoughts begin and end with him. How far you go with that is the sort of the hair I need to split here, because when I talk about mental point of origin, this is the first thing people are going to bring up. When I talk about mental point of origin, people say, well, are you saying be a selfish asshole? Are you saying just be a prick or whatever? Are you saying you just need to be an arrogant? Because I can't do that. I would never do that. No, what I'm saying is you need to make yourself your very first thought. When I talk about enlightened self-interest, what I mean is I cannot do as well, or I can't be as useful to anyone else before I'm useful to myself, before I think of myself. I have to think of me before I can think of other people. If you want this situation to be the best, then I need to come first, and then I will apply my best to this situation. It's a concept called enlightened self-interest.
Let me throw Tate. Tate to me, and I listen to him. First of all, I love the guy. I mean, he's very he's got the game together. He is not, I don't consider him to be a jerk. I don't consider him to be an asshole. He has, some people might say he's arrogant. Yeah, but it's an arrogance that's been earned. It's confidence. He's confident, and he's got a lot of options out there. He does not come across to me as a jerk. I know people that are jerks. Tate's not it. He does it with sort of, what he does with a little bit of a smile. And I think girls get that, and I think guys get it too.
Yeah. He's definitely on the jerk side of things, but but here's the thing: is like again,
not offensive.
No.
Yeah.
Well, here's what he has the qualities. He has those dark triad qualities that women look for when they're considering a jerk, when they're considering a guy that makes women qualify to him. And when you can actually back that up, like I always talk about amused mastery. Amused mastery is a great technique to use with women, but it's so much more effective if you actually have the mastery to be amused with, right? So it's not an act. You're not playing a game anymore. You're actually that guy. Like, so when Tate applies amused mastery with women, it comes from a different place than guys who are like pickup artists, and they're going, okay, let me see how I can use amused mastery in this, and fake it till you make it, versus I've already made it, and this is how I actually am. So I agree with you with respect to Tate. I think that he gets up to a point, but one of the reasons why people hate on him so much, or they think he's a jerk, or they think he's like an arrogant, cocky son of a bitch, is because they're coming from that side of the spectrum where they think that anything that is pro-masculine, that is in any way aggrandizing of conventional masculinity, that implies jerk. That implies, oh, he must be, because he's got a Lambo, he must be insecure in his masculinity. No, but you think that because you've been raised and acculturated in generation after generation to think that those indications are of a guy who is a jerk. And guess what? Now you have an opportunity to prove your quality to Milady by saying, I would never be as good. I would never do that. Imagine being like this.
Right here. Right. Here's the thing Tate has going for him that a lot of guys don't. Likability. Okay, likability. For example, Hillary Clinton's biggest problem is she's not likable. And that's not only by men, but women too. She actually repels people with her personality. Tate is likable. He sort of sucks you in. There's guys out there that are jerks, that are assholes, that repel you. Just the whole personality. It's like, you're an arrogant SOB. I don't know why anyone would want any of your time. Tate's not that. Tate has that likability, and he's capitalized on it. And that tied with the confidence with the options.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from with respect to the likability side of things. But you're always going to have those guys who are going to use him as an opportunity to like highlight their niceness. And the fact that is even something that guys would default to shows you how this generation, how the last, like I said, 3 or 4 generations have been feminized, have been taught to think in what I call a feminine correct way of thinking. Now, getting back to what I was talking about with respect to enlightened self-interest, people will always say, well, does that mean I have to be a jerk? No, it means that I cannot help others until I can help myself first. But be sure you do help others, right? After you've thought of yourself and you've done the best for yourself, what are you going to do with that afterwards? That's kind of like something I've always really kind of lived my own life after. It's like, I got to be the guy who, I have to build myself up. I have to be the best that I can be. And then once I'm at that point, then I get to decide, and hopefully I'm a better judge of character as a result of that. I can decide who it is worth my time. Is my wife, my daughter, my family, my friends, those, how am I going to apply the best of me because I made me first? That's what I'm getting at. It's not just this selfishness or be a prick, because people want to go to the extremes. They love binary.
When I went to Orlando, that was like the centerpiece of my talk. I got news for you. The girl is not the prize. The woman is not the prize. You've been lied to. You've been deceived. You are the prize. That's why when you talk about waiting until you're 30 to 35 to get married, it absolutely makes sense, because a guy at about 22, you're still in the embryonic phase. You haven't become what you're, with a few exceptions here, you haven't become what you're ultimately going to become as a man. You need to work on improving yourself, bettering yourself, whether that's going to the gym, whether that's, getting a degree, whatever it is, it's going to make you better so that you become the attractive package that other guys want to be like and women want to be with.
Yes, exactly. I want to run these are actually some super chats that are on topic. Here we go. Super duper delight says, hi, please talk about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. It's great case study there. Yes, it is. First thing she asked when being set up with him, is he nice? And so I'll just give you my quick take. Yeah. I mean, to the extreme, he is nice in such a way that he is representative, Prince Harry is representative of that emasculated nice guy that has been, kind of socially engineered for like I said, last 3 or 4 generations. He has become the epitome of those generations where he's crying on demand. He wants to be as nice as he possibly can. He's looking at, longing. I mean, if you've seen the pictures of them at the wedding, she's just I think she's sort of like, what have I got myself into? When you look at her, because this is a woman who is she follows the plan of sort of the, alpha seed beta need. Like when she was in her party years, she was she's been married before, of course. She's been an actress. You look at her prior boyfriends, and they're all, I mean, I don't want to go all TMZ on us.
Probably higher than yours, to be honest with you. Yeah. This is the greatest stunt ever perpetrated on mankind. 36-year-old divorcee and she becomes the princess to Harry. You got to look at who Harry's been raised by. Look at his dad, for God's sakes. Look at his mother. Okay, look at that whole culture that he was raised in. He was raised as a defective girl, is what he was raised as.
And so you have Meghan Markle, who knows this, and she's asking, is he nice? Because, and this is my opinion here, is I think she's the kind of woman at that particular time who is looking for someone that she can manipulate. It's like very similar to Jeff Bezos's what's her name? Dirty Sanchez. I can't remember. She's looking for a guy that is still ignorant of the game, that is still ignorant that he's a beta, that's still ignorant that he's a nice guy, because there's nothing that is more useful to a woman at that stage of her life than a guy who's still ignorant of that, but has made a lot of money and she can play on that emotional need and play on the what I call it. I wrote this one essay called Dream Girls and Children with Dynamite. It's that dream girl fantasy. Like, my ship has finally come in, right? I've put all this money away. I'm finally making partner in the law team. I'm finally coming into my own. And oh, wow, this girl who wouldn't have anything to do with me, now she's suddenly the best thing in the world. And she's finally learned. She's finally learned how to appreciate a guy like me. No guy. I call these guys betas in waiting, because they get to a point where they have this fantasy that if they just measure up, if they just keep doing what they're doing, that it's all going to hit pay dirt at some point. And women understand this. Particularly clever, savvy women who are savvy of the game see that. They understand that their options are starting to decline. Their sexual market value is going away.
It's not that all of a sudden you're attractive. Here's the deal. She has fewer options. She's running out of time. She's going to grab whatever's available.
Big fish.
What's available right now, you're the best.
DJ Han Solo.
You predicted on my program, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it was on my program, it could have been on a podcast. You predicted that Markle and Harry will split, and it's going to be because she cheats on him. Hypergamy is going to override her engine, and she's going to go out looking for that red hot monkey sex.
Yeah, there's going to be something there. She is like, even the prince, even being in the best financial position she can be with. I mean, she's got the dream, right? She's married a prince. She's a prince. She's literally a princess. It's still not going to be enough to prevent that hypergamy. It's still not going to be enough for her not to want to cheat, not to want to get out. I mean, it happened with Princess Di. She did the same thing. It was too much. That guy was too beta. It doesn't matter if he's a prince. It doesn't matter if he's a millionaire. He's too beta for her to live the rest of her life with that guy. And so there's I think this happens more for women today than probably in the past, right. But also she's in that demographic, because what is she, like 36 years old? So she's still she's still pre-40s. And I think that within the next 4 years, before she gets to 40, something's going to happen between them if he doesn't actually kill himself. And I hate to be the guy that's predicting that, because I hope he doesn't, but at this stage, I think he is so painfully blue pill and so painfully beta that might be a possibility for him. I don't want to see that happen.
Was that the royal family was together again, and why had they been apart? Because of her. She has caused such a schism within the family. She's everybody sees it except him. Everybody sees it except him.
I think she's BPD. DJ Han Solo here says, "Are hive-minded MGTOW in the nice guy category?" I don't know. I think you have to sort of look at that on a by case basis there. Yeah, maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know. That's kind of a tough one to say without really, if you want to show me a particular guy, maybe. But let's move on here. What's the difference between a nice guy and here's a good one. There is a difference between nice guy and a kind person. A kind person still has themselves first and is firm about their position. Tate, nice guys bend over backwards, etc. Yeah, I get that. I think like a lot of women want to in some way have what I call a beta with a side of alpha. Like they think that that's something like that exists. Like, I really love my nice guy beta guy, but I really wish he was more masculine. I really wish he would tell me no sometimes. I wish he would really take charge. And I think that's sort of what women are running into today because there's not enough alpha guys to go around. There's that top 20% of guys is not going to get with, you know, the lower 80% of women. Remember, when I'm talking about the Pareto principle, what I'm saying is 100% of women are looking for that top 20% of guys.
Somebody said, how can she hypergamy from a prince? Is there a higher status? Is there a higher status? It's not the status thing. It's going to be the sex thing. That's going to, because let's face it, Harry is not, you know, the stud. He's not, you know, you're talking about her falling for somebody. We ought to send Tate on a mission.
Oh, Tate and I talked about this as well, as about respect. And I think that he is not ever going to be somebody that she can respect, because she's been with guys that she did respect. She's already been with guys who are far, far more alpha than he is. And you want to talk about alpha widow on steroids, this is going to be it. Because when I talk about a woman being alpha widow, she's still, you know, fawning and pining for the guys in her past, in her party years, the guys that she had hot monkey sex with in the foam cannon party on spring break in Cancun. Those are the guys that end up being like the best sex she ever remembered, but she couldn't get that guy locked down. Either she waited too long, or things didn't work out, or he was too much of a jerk, or he had too many other options, and she wasn't one of those options. So she gets with the guy later on in life. She goes through her epiphany phase, and she settles for a guy who is a good provider. You know, he might be a good guy for the long term, but then after 7 years, after 20 years, somewhere along those lines, that's when she says, I really wish he was more exciting. I really wish I had that beta with that side of alpha, because that excitement is no longer part of my life, and I really want to get back to that. And if I don't get that before I'm 40, then I'm not going to live the life that I really wanted to live. So what you see happening is, particularly, and I don't know how we got into using these two, but you see Meghan Markle, who's already had that. She's already been with those alphas, and now she's with a guy who all these women will say, oh, you married a prince, you're actually a real princess, but he's like Prince Beta. And
here's the other thing too, and we haven't really gotten into depth on this at any time, but either way, whether it's a guy dating a woman, or a woman dating a guy, especially the later it is in life, you know, let's say 40, let's say 50, okay, that individual is being compared with everybody else you've ever been with. It's not like when you go out and you get your first car. Your first car, you don't have anything to compare it with, because it is your first car. This is probably going to be, well, in your case, it'd be your 41st car, but you're comparing it to everything else you've ever driven. Yeah, exactly. And this is, I think, more pronounced with women because of that hypergamous instinct. Okay, so when I talk about women's hypergamous filters, what I mean is like all of the criteria that woman has for you in the long term, but also in the short term as well. So he's got to be hot. He's got to be funny. He's got to be, have the V taper, but he also has to love his mother. He also has to, like, all of these qualities that would make him someone that she could fall in love with, someone that she could have an emotional investment with. He's got to get past at least a few of those checks on the checklist to do so. And so what happens is, as far as like hypergamy is concerned, that guy has to in some way get underneath that. He has to be the actual real deal. But when she gets into that, once she's already got into that relationship, now is he the best I can do? And if he's the nice guy, if his predominant character is that nice guy, that's when the trouble starts, because she's already been with guys who got past her filter, who were better choices, but now she's stuck with this guy for the long term. That's why it's so much more intense for women than it is for guys. When guys are having second thoughts or whatever, it's more intense, I think, for women, because there's that survival, there's that evolved aspect of that hypergamous filter that says, if I don't choose the right guy, if I don't have the optimization that I need, I could die, or I won't live the kind of life that I think I should, that I'm entitled to, that I should live. So I think that's why it's more intense. Talk about nice guys, okay? And somebody put this in the chat room here too. And their covert contract, and that's an agreement I haven't actually made, but which you perceive to be solid. See, when guys, the nice guys, they think if I do A, B, C, D, I'm going to get whatever.
Right.
From
transactional. Her. That's a transactional nature.
When it doesn't materialize, in fact, you find out she's taking you for granted. She feels entitled. In fact, the more you do, the more she pushes you away. It's like the fluke of all time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna just show this one right here so people can read this while I'm talking about this. Yeah. So what I see happening right now in this era is because we have social media and because we can sort of, we're a lot more connected, and in that connection, we have created we've created I don't know, I guess a narrative about what guys are really about and what women are really about. And when we're talking about nice guys, I think that women really hate the idea of the nice guy. They want to say, I want a nice guy, because the qualities of that guy seem like something that they would want to be involved with for the rest of their lives. Obviously, they don't want to have, an arrogant jerk to be their husband for the rest of their lives. They want to have somebody who's going to be good with the kids. What is it? It's on the personality. One of the big 5 personality traits is like agreeableness. That's one of the things that betas have in spades, right? The blue pill beta is very, very agreeable, because that blue pill beta does not have the same options as a guy who is more arrogant. Like when we think of alpha guys, or a guy who's natural, we tend to think of that guy as being a little bit full of himself, or maybe has some of those dark triad traits as a result of him having an advantage, being attractive, being naturally attractive, having women, to find a guy who's very, very attractive and still be humble. Women love that, because now they have the best of both worlds. They have the guy who is sweet and kind and lovable and is humble, and that's controllable, but he's also very, very hot. So it's sort of the balance between the best balance between the two, but that's very, very rare. On the opposite side, you have the guys who are very agreeable all the time and want to be serviceable, because they know that they don't have the same options. So for the nice guy, it seems like a good idea. It seems like a very good idea to be as nice and as serviceable and as loyal and dependable as they possibly can, because that's their selling point. Their selling point is, I would be the perfect boyfriend for you. Why do you keep going back to those jerks? Why do you keep having sex with your alpha boyfriend on the weekends and then come crying to me later on? And I'm here to help you out, and I'm here to sort of be your emotional tampon, and I'm here to fix the flat tire and do all of this stuff, because they think in terms of transaction. They think that if they can say, okay, I'll fix your tire, you love me. I'll pay for your rent, you love me. We see this all the time in cam girls. That's why women have been able to turn this into sort of a cottage industry for themselves. So all a woman has to be is just sweet and nice and amicable to guys who are so starved for that attention that they'll do anything. And they think that by doing the things that they are, I'll buy you a diamond ring, I'll send you to Cancun, whatever, I will be of some kind of service to you, that is going to get them more of that appreciation that they crave, because they don't get it in their real lives. That's why that's an industry right now, because most beta men, because they live in a scarcity mentality, they think that everything is a transaction. If I give her this, it's like return on investment, or they think it's a return on investment, until they get to a point where they're bitter and angry because that investment is not paying off. They're not getting the dream girl. All they're doing is being a schmuck, giving these women, they're basically just giving them all kinds of money. And then to that point, you also see that these guys have taken it to the next level and turned it into another cottage industry, which is sugaring. That's why you have sugar daddies and all that other good stuff.
Here's the other thing. I'll share a story with you. My youngest daughter's 16. Her 2 best friends have a brand new Camaro that daddy bought them. Okay. My daughter doesn't. My daughter has to buy her own car like everybody else. All my kids, my oldest son, Michael, had his first vehicle at 15 and a half before he could drive. Okay. Because that teaches them independence. It teaches them a whole set of skills we can get into. When you give your daughter a Camaro, brand new Camaro at 16, okay, what you're training, you're growing a monster. You're developing an entitled princess that thinks that she's going to be owed all of these things just because I'm daddy's little princess. And that's not the way the world works.
Special. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're building up that transactional nature. So not only does she not learn to do things for herself or to pay for things for herself, you're also teaching her that somebody somewhere just because she's special, just because she's beautiful, just because whatever, just because she shows any kind of loving, the milk of human kindness is all that she needs to show. And she'll get a Camaro, she'll get a free vacation, she'll get, whatever her ad revenue is on Snapchat, those kinds of things. When you do that, you're reinforcing not just that in your daughter, but you're also reinforcing it in the guys who are wanting to pay off that. Now,
how you say attention is the coin of the realm, right?
Mm-hmm.
What they do, what a dad does like that is you just monetized attention. Attention now comes with the price.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that once again, you and I have talked about validational sex versus transactional sex. When we talk about the transactional nature of sex or the transactional nature between men and women, now guys are going to argue with me and say, well, it's all transactional. Well, okay, you could split hairs all the way down. But what I'm talking about here is when you're a beta guy, when you're blue pill, when you believe in the nice guy, all you got to do is be nice to her. All you got to do is be serviceable. All this stuff that you've been conditioned for a very long time. When you do all of that is rooted in the transactional nature of sex between men and women. Now, that's the sex part. There's also the relationship part and appreciation and all that other stuff. So you get these guys who think that if they, that everything will be okay with their wife if they buy flowers. Like if they messed up, I'm going to buy flowers. I'm going to find some way to buy off the emotion that you are giving to me.
Let's talk about the flowers because we did this on my local program. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we got a place here in town. It's called Fine Airport Parking. It's where when you go to the Tulsa International Airport.
I've heard the ads.
Well, so when you go there, the owner, Mike Fine, has roses. And he offers you roses to take home to your wife, your girlfriend, your significant other. And I didn't believe it still. I actually saw it. A lot of guys turn it down. In fact, when I was in line that one day with him, there were two guys in front of me that one initially said yes. And then he says, no. He said, she's going to think I was up to something. And the other one basically said the same thing. He said, no, she'll think I did something. So, and I have never given flowers as, I don't know, like a peace offering for doing something wrong. But you're saying that's pretty much the standard operating process for giving flowers.
Well, it's almost like I think when we talk about gifts or flowers and even compliments, those should only ever be for desired behavior with respect to guys. If a woman does something that you like or that you want to reinforce behavior you want, and you want to, I said punish, but you want to unreinforce behaviors that you don't want. And one thing exactly. And I was just sort of getting into it with Dr. Diana Fleischman about like how, she's got this series, or she's got some lecture series that she's doing about how to behaviorally train your boyfriend. And this is something I've been talking about this since like 2002 when I was at school studying this stuff. And that's what led me to get to where I'm at. But that's what, gift giving really is it's behavioral conditioning. It's a reward for something. So if you give a woman flowers just out of the blue, the first thing she's going to think is, what did he do? He's doing this to make up for something, because that's the attitude that we have with respect, particularly for women, when it comes to a guy that they don't think is alpha. They think that guy is, if a guy is blue pill, or his predominant character is blue pill, nice guy, vulnerable, what we would refer to as, a beta, I guess. If that's his primary personality, his predominant personality, when he gives those gifts, it's usually because he did something wrong or he's trying to buy affection. And so the nature of that becomes something different here. Now, that's a great segue, because Hacker Boy here says this. He says, No More Mr. Nice Guy, which is a great book, by the way, says that a nice guy is just a passive-aggressive guy. He is serviceable to get something and gets angry when it doesn't work. All right. I agree with that, but I'm just going to say I halfway agree with that. So yeah, a nice guy can definitely fit that profile. I think right now a lot of women believe exactly this. They think that if a guy is nice, they're trying to do something in order to get them into bed, or to get on their good graces, because they're about to ask for a date. Or if a guy is nice, that he's doing all of these things because he's a fake nice guy. He's playing. One of the essays I have there is called "Play Nice," and this has been going on for at least as long as I've been in the manosphere. the play nice dynamic has been around for forever, because now women hate nice guys. There's the demographic of women who really want the nice guy, but those are the women who need that guy at that particular time in their lives. Then you got the women who are like 22, 23. They're not interested in the long term, but when a guy is nice to them, they see it as sort of a tit for tat. Now the transactional nature comes to the surface, and they see, well, this guy thinks he's owed sex because he fixed my tire, because he shoveled my snow, off of my front walk, right? He did something for me, and he's being nice, but he's only being nice because he wants me to go on a date with him, or he wants me to in some way have sex with him at some point. Like, he wants me to feel some sort of intimacy. Women hate that because it plays on their existential fear. That existential fear is they don't want to breed or get into a long-term relationship or spend their lives invested in the offspring of a lesser man. And so when a man tries to do that, he tries to get in underneath her hypergamous filter, when he tries to get on her good graces, that is not just an insult to them, in the conscious realm, it's also in the subconscious realm, because her hindbrain is saying, this guy's fake. He's trying to get in, and if you let him in, then I might have his baby, and we might be stuck with this guy for the rest of our lives. And so it triggers that fear, but it also triggers that anger that a guy would try to do that. And you and I talked about this on Friday, about that ruling in Australia, about how we need to make it illegal for guys, or need to make it essentially non-consensual sex, which amounts to rape, if a guy presents himself as something that he's not.
If you have sex under pretense, if you tell a woman you're a doctor, you're an attorney, I'm a professional football player, and you're not, that they're going to go back, and retroactively that removes the consent. But the one that got me the most was if you tell her you love her, but you don't, because love is something subjective. It's not objective, right? I mean, if you told somebody, say you were married to somebody for 3 years, and at the end, when you go for the divorce, you say, I never really loved you to begin with. Well, guess what? All of that sex that you had with her is now non-consensual.
Yeah, exactly. And so why is that? Why do we want a law for that? You have to know that this law is only going to work in one direction, no matter how they write it or say persons. No, you mean men. Okay. So why would that be a law? Why would we want to outlaw men saying something and being disingenuous with their approach or game, really is what it is. Why would that be a thing? Well, because women's existential fear is that they would ever get into a relationship with a guy who she thought was alpha. She had sex with that guy who she thought was alpha. And then later she realizes, oh man, this guy's not part of the law firm. He's actually a sandwich artist at Subway. How I can't believe I did, so there's that anger and that fear that goes along with that. So
to how women, they present themselves not, well, I don't want to say it a false way, but enhanced, with the makeup, the hair, all that kind of stuff. Carly on Friday.
Yeah, Carly. Every time I bring that up, Carly gives me lots of love. I always know I'm going to get into trouble with that. But just to quickly answer the rest of this, Acker boy. So he's saying this is the nice guy. He says he is serviceable to get something and gets angry when it doesn't work. Yes, I can understand that, but I think that a lot of guys who would characterize themselves as being nice, as like what we would call a stereotypical white knight, actually believe that it will work. They actually believe that that's what women want. They've heard it so many times that a woman just wants a nice guy to, settle down with, have a life with, chill and watch Netflix, and actually watch Netflix. That they actually want that. And so that guy says, because men are deductive problem solvers. So we will, and again, we believe in idealism. So if we want something, if we're going to solve our reproductive problem, what's the most pragmatic way of doing that? Well, A plus B should equal C. So I need sex, plus I need to ask a woman what she wants to get sex, plus I'll do that, equals I'll get sex. That's the deductive logic that guys use. And so when they hear woman says, well, you need to be nice, I need a guy who loves his mom, and he's got to like puppy dogs, and he's got to have a job and all this. So the guy goes, I'll do all that stuff that she told me that I should do. That'll solve my reproductive problems. Well, guess what? You're getting bad information from women because their actions show that they really don't want that. And they will be much more happy having sex with a guy who they have to qualify for, who the arrogant guy like Tate, who they have to actually follow along with. They have, that's another, people who kept throwing this one at me after the Tate interview. He says, well, he pays for those girls, or he's got, if he didn't have money, they would leave. Yeah, probably, because that's the nature of the whole thing. But he is also dominant. He has also learned that from his dad or from his life or whatever, to get to the point where he didn't get those women in his life just because he had money. He had all of that because he had an attitude. He had I keep saying alpha is a mindset. It is not a demographic. He doesn't get to where he is. There's plenty of rich guys. Like we would talk about Jeff Bezos all the time. Like, how could he possibly be with Dirty Sanchez? He could be living like Dan Blitzerian. Why isn't he doing that? Mindset. He doesn't have an alpha mindset. That's why
he doesn't have options. And for Jeff Bezos, that's as good as it gets right there. All he did was a parallel swap. Actually, the mistress is a year older than his actual wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to him, that's a step up because he still believes in that. And that's what I want to talk about here is he was saying, well, these guys get angry. Yeah, those nice guys get angry because they believe in the nonsense, because they believe that it should work. They believe that if they're nice, it's going to be reciprocated. And then, so what women do is they pretend like they don't know what's going on. They know damn well what's going on because they understand the transactional nature of sex, but they pretend that they're like, oh, I thought you were really a nice guy. You just want to have sex with me? Oh, I thought you were doing this just out of the kindness of your heart because you're just such a good friend.
Here's how even for guys out there that have been married for a long period of time. If your wife wants a big ticket item, whether it's a brand new car or a new house, she is going to put on the best show you've seen in years because she wants it, she gets it. That's the transactional.
Yeah, exactly.
All the time.
Yeah, you guys are giving me some good ones to talk about here, so let's do this. I like that one. Do you think measuring how well a woman can support your life and goals could help reduce nice guyism?
I want a woman to support my life.
I think I get what he's talking about. Could a supportive woman make you turn you from being a guy who's indecisive and to sort of change your mindset if she's there encouraging you, if she's like gets behind you or gets underneath what you're doing and lifts you up so you start thinking in a different way? I get what he's saying because I sort of felt that same way about my wife when I first met her. Right, when I first met my wife, I was very much, I wouldn't say I was blue pill, but I was just sort of waking up at that time to really the nature of women. I was coming out of that BPD relationship and I really wasn't the kind of guy that I am today. But I also say this is that my wife expected me to be the alpha. She expected me to be the guy who was in the driver's seat, literally. She expected me to be the guy who made the decisions for the family because that's where she was at. So in a way, I guess I can sort of understand where you're coming from. The problem is that women aren't attracted to those guys in the first place so that they can get behind them. When I talk about vulnerability, and we really need to dedicate a whole show to vulnerability at some point, but when I talk about that, like guys will say, well, you got to be an asshole. Or they think of vulnerability because they've been sold this blue pill nonsense, this nice guy nonsense that if they're vulnerable, if they show a weaker side of themselves, that in some way is going to be appreciated by women. And it's going to be something that's an attraction cue for women if the guy's vulnerable. Well, I would say that that's entirely false because most guys, most blue pill guys think that they're more of a good thing is better, right? So they just live this vulnerable, like over emotional kind of lifestyle. Now, I think in some ways though, if your predominant character is alpha, if you're more dominant, if you're in the driver's seat, just like kind of like your dad, right? If you're the guy who makes the decisions and she respects that as, that's your predominant personality character, whenever you show a moment of vulnerability, that's when that's something that women really love. But if you wear your heart on your sleeve, if you think that a vulnerability is something that you need to apply as part of your game, that is ass backwards is what that is. Let's see what else is here. Rolla, do you think nice guys are contributing to the mess that is poly right now? Yeah, I think so. And I said this with Tate as well. I think that with respect to poly, I think it's more of a beta male mating strategy when the way it's being done right now. Guys will say, well, isn't what Tate is doing, isn't that poly? Well, yeah, it's polygamy or polygyny, I guess. But that is one aspect that if you really want to hear more about this, just go. I don't want to get too deep in this. I talked about this for at least 2 hours with Ryan and the rest of the guys on Rule Zero yesterday.
Here's the thing. With poly, the new poly is a woman with multiple guys. Yes. That's not what Tate's doing old style polygamy, if anything, where he's the guy, he's the center, and he has multiple women.
Yeah,
that's very different. And again, what guy wants to share a chick?
Yeah,
something fundamental. I just, that thinking is completely foreign to me.
Yeah, and I see it as
no options. That's who.
Well, yeah, of course, it's guys that have no options. And what's better, to be an incel, to literally not have any, intimate contact with a woman, or to say, well, the only way I'm going to get it is if I'm in a poly relationship with another guy, and I've got to convince myself somehow that I'm a better man for it, or I'm more secure in my masculinity for it, while she can go out and nail guys on the weekends, actually look for an alpha, have her fun, and then give me sort of mitigated sex during the weekdays, and maybe I'm sharing it, and then calling that like some sort of improvement in their lives. I mean, you're getting sex or you're not getting sex. If that's the only way you can do it, that seems like a good idea. That's why I call it a beta male nice guy strategy.
So one of the things here in the show description, can a nice guy ever authentically, there's a key word, authentically shift his attitude to being a jerk? Can you go in a relationship being looked at as a nice guy and then change that? And if you can, how do you do it?
Right. Yeah. That's what I get into in, I've got an essay called Up the Alpha. And that's where I got into the idea of there's no such thing as a beta with a side of alpha. Once again, it comes down to your predominant characteristic. Are you predominantly alpha? Did she marry you because she respects you and she has alpha? She has an impression of you as the alpha male who is driving the ship, who is the decision maker, who is the primary in that relationship? Or are you the guy that was good enough that she just settled for? She's had her fun in her party years, and now you've got kids together, and she's stuck with you, and you're wondering why you can't get her to have sex with you. Well, maybe it's because you're a nice guy, and you've lived this idea that you need to be equal partners, which is never equal partners. Is that you? Because if that's you, and you want to change that, I talk to guys this all the time. I wrote a 4-part series called The Reconstruction. Most guys don't want to divorce their wives. They want their wives to be impressed with them, to admire them, to find them sexually arousing and attractive. They're already attractive, but they want them to be arousing again, so that they can have a better relationship with the woman that they've already been with. So can you do that? I think so, but it doesn't happen overnight. There's no magical pill for that, because if you are predominantly a beta male guy, and you start saying, oh, look, bitch, I'm going to, you better shape up or you're out of here, and you start acting out of character, inauthentically, women will see that as worse than is if you were like pouting or pandering to her, because it's not something that is genuine. It's you reacting to her. So
if you're a 40-year-old guy, you've let yourself go. Okay. Get your ass into the gym. You start looking better. Here's the deal. Her friends will start to notice. Her friends will tell her. That will get that. What do you call it? What kind of dread do you call it?
Oh, passive dread.
Passive dread. I just pulled up your the price of nice here. Let me read this Post-it note.
Sure.
That was put up. And to me, this just screams desperation.
This is in the description, by the way, if you want to read along.
It says, okay, ladies, I get it. You don't want a pleasant evening chat. You don't want a gentleman to walk you to your car. You don't want a friendly dude to help you carry your groceries or hold open the door or crush the life out of other men that would do you harm. Fine. Fear the good guys. I guess we'll just have to suffer through watching you get broken over and over by the scum you think you love. But I want you to know it's not easy, and it hurts to see you fall. Give the good guys a chance to help you be less afraid of the world. This is a cry of desperation. It's like that guy, the farmer that put out the thing, I don't understand why good women don't want to date me. I own my own house and I've got 700 pounds of beef. And it was like, I am so desperate. You know, it just screams desperation.
Right. So what happens, and if you look at the responses to this, the most predictable response is no one owes you sex. That's where women will go with this, because when you see a guy, and I would say that the guy who wrote that note meant every word of it. Like, he believed in that. He believes that he doesn't understand. It's a cry of desperation, but it's also a cry for like sanity, or like a cry for understanding. Because when guys say this, the first thing, or whether they, God forbid you vocalize it, or God forbid you put it on something like this on Twitter, but when you write this down and when you put it out there, women take this as offensive because it seems like a guy who believes that he's owed sex. And that's why the reason owed sex is such a hot button issue for women, a reason that it inspires anger, is because it's an exposition, or it's an exposing of, the transactional nature of sex, but also it's an exposing of that existential fear. Here's a guy who thinks that if he does all these things, I'm going to select him for reproduction. And women don't want that. Only their hypergamous filters should be the last arbiter of whether that guy is alpha, or he's beta, or he's worth having sex with, or he's not worth having sex with. So that's why women get upset at these things when it's exposed. But the other thing is that it does you no favors by doing this. Now, I was looking in the chat here, and people I forget who was saying it, but it's that, betas or nice guys don't ever do anything without a reason, without a point. And that reason, of course, implied is that they want to have sex. They want to find some way to go from being platonically friends with you, because nice guys believe in friends, and they want to go from being a friend to being that intimate, that confidant. And this is the illustration that I always use, is nice guys are the stuffed animal. They're the guys that are there to hug and to hold. And like when she's crying, she's like the emotional tampon. She's he's the guy that's there to absorb the tears and to tell her it's okay. And at the same time, he's trying to say, well, I would be better for you than he is. And you play that out for a very long time until you get to the epiphany phase, and that's when women actually might want that guy. But those guys honestly think that by doing that's going to get them in there, that they're going to have a better chance with a woman. It's what I call the sniper mentality. It's these guys who will wait for their shot. They'll be like, okay, I'm gonna pick her up from work. I'm gonna pay her rent. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be the ideal of the perfect boyfriend that every woman has ever told me that this is what they want in a guy. I'm gonna be that for her until I can take my shot. And then they take that one shot and they try to what's known as jumping ladders. So they try to go from the friendship ladder to the intimate ladder. And that's when that stuffed animal suddenly has a heart on. That stuffed animal suddenly has a dick, right? And so she's hugging the stuffed animal. And so he's like, hey, what about me, man? Maybe we could go out sometime. And then she's like, oh my God, the stuffed animal has a dick. What do I thought you were a nice stuffed animal. I thought you were going to be the guy who was going to just, absorb all my tears and take over that side of it. And I if I don't put this out there, I will have been remiss. But what this situation is if you are the nice guy, if you're the emotional tampon, as we say, this is a similar situation to a woman who is a fuck buddy, who is a friend with benefits. So when you look at situations, when you look at a relationship that is like a friends with benefits, you have all the sex, but you have none of the emotional investment. It's just like, hey, you want to come over and get after it? Yeah. Bang, they go, and then that's it. So it's sex, and there's nothing else attached to it, like no NSA sex, right? No strings attached. It's just to get it on and get done. And there's no emotional investment. The opposite is exactly what I just described here. That stuffed animal, it's all emotion, and it's all that the beta side of hypergamy. It's all that provisioning, all that emotion, all of that investment of yourself and personality and everything else. It's all of that good stuff with none of the sex. So it's the flip side of the friends with benefits. So if that's you, if you're in that nice guy situation, people have been asking me in the chat here is like, how do you back up? How do you get out of this? Right? Like you were just saying a minute ago, can you go from being like this beta nice guy to in some way being alpha? Can you have a little side of alpha? Can you have a flash of alpha? I would suggest no, not with a woman who has already made that determination of you. If her hindbrain sees you as that nice guy beta, if your predominant personality traits are the beta traits or the nice guy traits, it will take you would have to separate yourself from that person and then come back as a different person. So if like I've used this analogy before, like when guys are in high school and they're the stereotypical nice guy in high school, and then they go off to the military and they leave their town and they go off and they go on deployment or whatever. They come back maybe 4 or 6 years later and they come back and the same girls are right there, the same girls that they knew in high school who knew them as the nice guy. And suddenly they've toughened up. Suddenly they become somebody different because of that experience. That might be a way that you can go about doing it. Like if you to change the nature of what women see in you, yeah, you could probably do that. But if you don't make that change and you don't make that change gradually, people will see it as, I'm sure you've heard this before, your friends will say, you're trying to be somebody that you're not. You're trying, because they see that disingenuousness. They're saying, why are you trying to be somebody you're not? You're a poser. Why do we say that you're a poser? Well, because you're acting out of your predominant character. So if your predominant character is beta, you can do that, but you have to do it gradually. You can't just go, I went to the gym this week and now I'm suddenly alpha. It doesn't work that way. You can do that, but it has to be something you internalize, and it has to be something that's at least in some way seems that you came into being that guy over the course of time. Like you had some experiences that brought you to that.
Do you have more questions?
I do, actually. We're getting some really good ones about this. Thank you guys for staying on topic today. God.
Somebody said that to you, or you're saying that to the questions?
No, I'm saying this. Thank you for staying on topic. How can a 5'2" balding 30-year-old Indian guy get laid in the UK, even by trying to act alpha and no beta bucks? People always disqualify based on height. Is this the black pill? You know what? If you want to talk about that, I would suggest you go and you talk to Troy Francis. Troy's really good with guys in your demographic. People are also saying, well, you need to do a show on the black pill. I have done a show on the black pill already. And I think that the black pill gets the analysis, the diagnosis right. It's just the prescription is wrong. That's pretty much the best way I can say that. Oh, here's a good one. Is Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid movie a stereotype beta nice guy? I don't, you know what? Pat, read the bonus question for today, because that sort of keys in on this guy's. Yeah.
That's what we're going to go to next. Okay. So what's the difference between Iron Man and Captain America?
Iron Man and Captain America. Okay. First of all, yes, I know these are, fantasy characters, okay, but they're built on archetypes. Old school superheroes, particularly the more well-known ones. I'm going to go with Marvel here for a second. So you got Captain America, you've got Iron Man. In DC, you would have Superman and you would have Batman. Both of those guys are technically the good guys, right? Maybe Batman is sort of like the vigilante. He's sort of the anti-hero. But when I look at the character of Tony Stark, Iron Man, and you look at the character of Steve Rogers, which is Captain America, you're looking at two alpha archetypes, but you're also looking at different ways of applying that archetype. So if you look at Tony Stark, he's got the dark triad characteristics that we were just discussing with respect to Tate and all this other stuff. He's cocky, he's funny, sarcastic, is definitely in control of his own frame. And this is again, is there a really person like that? No, but there are people like that. There are guys like that. And that is an alpha archetype. Now, Captain America is the good guy. He's the guy who he stands up for what's right. He's to put this in like Dungeons and Dragons terms, he's the lawful good guy. whereas like Tony Stark is really more like the chaotic good guy. So you got these two alpha archetypes, but one is sort of the nice guy, the blue pill alpha, and the other one is sort of the woke, really woke, red pill, chaotic alpha archetype. And so I wanted to use those two. And you could also make the same case for, like, say, Superman. Superman is this, the American way and does everything the right way and wants to go along with what is pro-social. He's still a good guy. And we look at him, I think women look at him in a different way. Like, he's the guy that they want to marry, whereas Batman is the guy that they want to have sex with. Batman is the dark, brooding, he's still an alpha male archetype, but he is, gets it done and does things his own way. Definitely is thinking of himself prior to thinking of the best for Gotham City. Whereas Superman is thinking about the collective. He's thinking about, like, what's better for the greater good. Whereas Batman is like, we're going to do what's necessary to keep the peace, or to go forward with society, and whatever means necessary kind of guy. So you have two alpha archetypes right there. One's the nice guy. One is really more towards the jerk end of the spectrum. So what I get into, the reason I wanted to use this as an example is because a lot of guys, or actually I should say a lot of women, like to say, well, an alpha male is a guy who's a leader of the community. He's a leader of men. He does what's right. He loves his mother. He's all those attractive characteristics that a woman wants in a long-term husband, a long-term mate. Right. That's that archetype. And so that's that one guy. But then you've got Tony Stark, who is the guy who is cocky and funny and has those dark triad traits, and they can't get enough of him. He brings out that this is old school pickup artistry. Is he brings out that emotional imprint that women are looking for. They're looking for that indignation. Superman doesn't have that indignation. Batman has indignation. And so when we're looking at, like, the spectrum of the nice guy versus jerk spectrum, guys will always say, well, what am I supposed to be? Should I just be, we solve this problem? Like, what am I supposed to be? I'm supposed to be an asshole? Am I supposed to be a jerk? Am I supposed to do that? Or why can't I be nice? Or just what you were saying a moment ago about how these guys really get invested in in who they are as a person, as a nice guy. And they'll cling to it because they really, well, first of all, they feel that that's their only option, but they'll cling to it because they think that's the right thing to do. So anything that deviates from that seems like, oh, it's evil, it's bad. And so you got women saying, oh, we want Steve Rogers, we want Captain America, he's the nicest guy, but then they go and they want to have sex with Tony Stark. And so what I tell guys is this, is like, if you want to solve this problem, find out what your predominant characteristic is. Are you more predominantly Tony Stark, or are you more predominantly more like Steve Rogers? I think today, because of the way we've acculturated ourselves and because we have a feminine primary society and the way we raise little boys, most men opt for the nice guy side of the spectrum. It's not right in the middle. If it was right in the middle, you'd be the good guy and that would be it. But it is, most guys want to lean towards being serviceable. Even our religion, we teach guys, you need to be of service to others, right? You need to think of others before you think of yourself. We get that constantly in the major religions. We need to not just to forward society, but also to, like, please God. You've got to be a guy who thinks of others before you think of himself. Be self-sacrificial. And that's another theme that we see with men, is that men must sacrifice for women. The Tony Starks, the Andrew Tates, they're not sacrificing anything for women. If you want to be along for the ride, you can be along for the ride. I would love to have you, but you're along for the ride. This is my frame, and this is where you're going. So I would say, if you can in some way evaluate where you are on that spectrum between the nice guy and the jerk, lean more towards the jerk. I'm not saying be a jerk, but harness the energy of the jerk. Find the way to still adopt that, certainly have mental point of origin, adopt the mannerisms, adopt the thought, the mindset, I guess, of the jerk. But it doesn't mean you have to be, an arrogant asshole. You can just lean more to that side and see how that works for you. Because most beta guys, they don't want to experiment. They're afraid to experiment because if they do, it's a missed opportunity for reproduction because they don't get too many of them.
If you're already in a relationship and it's established that you're the nice guy, Can you change that, or is it in your best interest to get out, start fresh with somebody else?
That was a question I got when I was writing the Reconstruction series. A lot of guys don't want to break up with their wives, and when I wrote this series, it was for
your wife, your girlfriend too.
Yeah, it could be a girlfriend too. Yeah, I think you probably have a better time or an easier time doing it with you if you had a girlfriend, but because things are a little bit more uncertain. And there's that competition anxiety. If you're doing it right and you have a girlfriend, you can still at least in some way stoke soft dread, and you can instigate urgency and competition anxiety. But when I wrote the Reconstruction, it was guys who were in long-term relationships. They've been in marriages for in some cases like 30 years, and they're sexless marriages, and they want to know why it is that their wife won't have sex with them, and how can they become more alpha, and how can they do so in an authentic, genuine way. And the first thing I tell them is, break up with your wife. Break up with your wife up here. Not actually don't go get paperwork drawn up or anything like that, but you have to break up with your wife, because the first thing you have to do is you have to make yourself your mental point of origin, but you also have to work on yourself. Or if you're going to be alpha, you have to do it for you and not for her. And the reason I say that is that might sound like very motivational speaker-ish, but you have to do it for you, because if you don't do it for you, it will seem like you're doing it for her, and that seems disingenuous. So you have to break up with her and say, yeah, I don't care what she thinks. I'm going to make myself a better person with the understanding that I'm going to get back into the sexual marketplace, and I'm going to be the best person I can be. And once I get to that point, I'm going to decide whether I want to stay with my wife or I want to leave my wife. So what I tell guys is break up with your wife in your head and work on yourself. Become more alpha, but do so gradually. If that means going out and putting yourself first, making yourself your mental point of origin, making your decisions be about you, getting to the gym, for instance. If you just start going to the gym and then just start acting like, oh, I'm an alpha now, that's going to sound disingenuous to your wife. But if you go, you know what, I'm going to go to the gym, I'll see you later. You start that becomes a habit for you. You start doing those things. What happens is then your wife or your girlfriend or whatever, they see changes happening in you. And if you're doing this where you're upping the alpha, as I like to call it, if you're upping the alpha while you're doing this in a progressive way, then eventually it seems like it is more genuine, because it is actually genuine. You're doing it for yourself, as if you're going to, put yourself back out on the sexual marketplace. And that triggers a new doubt or a new understanding of you in a woman's hindbrain. Like when we talk about the hypergamous question, or the hypergamous doubt is he the best I can do? If a woman has already said in her head, nah, he's not really the best I can do, but I'm stuck with him for now. I still love him, but I'm not in love with him. If she's still thinking that, what you need to do is you need to re-trigger that estimate. And how can you get your wife or your girlfriend or whatever to re-estimate you? And how can you do that in a genuine way?
So as a dad, what would you advise fathers with sons? How do you tell your son, teach your son to treat women in 2019?
Mm-hmm. The first place I would start is you need to apply mental point of origin. You got to make yourself the one that you've got to have a frame.
It's not her.
You're the prize. You're the prize, but you've internalized that to the point where you are your decision-making process, you come first. And I would say that there's a lot more for guys of this. If, let's say you're a marriageable age, right? There's a lot more for guys to unlearn than there is to learn. So you need to unlearn this idea that you have to be serviceable, or you have to in some way provide a service to her to get her to like you. A lot of guys think, the other thing I would say is you have to unlearn the idea that likes attract, opposites attract. If you go and if you look at, I hate to use Tate as like the metric here, but if you look at what Tate's been doing, I'm not saying you're going to go out and you're going to start your own harem, but you still have to adopt the idea that you are. You still have to think of yourself in terms of you are a guy who is worthy of respect. You have to make the most of your potential. Like I said, the burden of performance. You will always be judged by the performance that you provide as a man, whether it's men or it's women or whatever. So actually you want to be authentic, then actually have that mastery so that be amused with it. So there's that aspect. But I would also say that you need to insist on frame. You need to insist on respect, and anything less than that needs to be cut off. Just like what Tate was saying. He's like, all the girls that are with Tate are free to go anytime they want. They can go do whatever the hell they want to. In fact, that's what he says. He just simply doesn't deal with any of the nonsense. Like if women start acting like he gave me this really great scenario about how, like, when he was training for a fight, and because he was an MMA fighter, he was training for a fight, and I think it was a day or two before he was supposed to do the fight. That's when his girlfriends, started acting up. That's when they started wanting attention. That's when they started instigating things, and it was a distraction to him. So his way of coping with that was just say, look, I'm just not going to deal with you guys. You guys go do what you're going to do. I'm the primary in this relationship. You're going to follow my lead, or you're not, right? You're in or you're out. And I think that's really the basis for creating a woman who has genuine desire for you. So it's not just like, I was talking to Tate about respect and how men and women have different concepts of respect. But there's also that genuine desire. That woman has to want to be with you. And if
we
not,
got to do a show on the difference between men's definition of respect and women's definition, because it's almost like love. It's a completely different thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're not on the same page. It means different things to the individual sexes. I'm looking at the clock. It's 5. I got a buck.
Okay. Yeah. You know what? I think we'll probably just call it here, because I think I have talked about pretty much all of these things. So, Pat, thanks for hanging. I'm just going to do a little bit of upkeep here, and then we'll
on Friday.
Yeah. We'll see you on Friday, man.
Talk to you later. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Cool. Thanks, Pat, for joining me today. I hope you guys have got something out of this. I think we actually gave a lot of actionable information in this one. A couple of things to sort of catch up on. Let's see here. Thanks, Sam, for keeping up with my supers. Let's see. Isidore Calderon. I'm going to answer a couple of these before I go. Don't value beauty. That makes you nice. Have standard. Gosh, you guys, the English is really something here. Have standard boundaries to fit in your life. Less nice if judging how she benefits your life. Okay, I think I get what you're talking about here. So I think the bottom line is pretty much what I was just talking about with respect to Tate, is like, women are in your life because they are a complement to it. I've said this a million times, is a woman should be a complement to a man's life and never the focus of it. And that right there, in a nutshell, is the difference between the nice guy and the jerk. So the nice guy puts her as his focus. He sees her as the guy, as the main goal in his life is to make her happy. The main goal is, and however he came to that, like maybe it's through his family, maybe he's what I call a promise keeper. Maybe he had a really kind of a shit childhood and he didn't want to be like his old man. And so now he's going to, I'm going to do everything right that my old man didn't do right. And I'm going to focus on her. I'm going to make her feel loved, and we're going to have a great family. And all I'm going to do is focus on her all the time, because that's what I really want to do, because that will make for a better life. That is no way to live, because women don't want that. They want you to be in control. They want you to be the dominant. What is it? Royce said a woman craves to submit to a worthy man. So how are you going to be that? Well, so if you're making a woman the focus of your life, you're probably a nice guy. If you're not, and women are a complement to your life, like for instance, again, I'm going to use Tate here, is if you have a direction, if you have a goal, if you have a passion, if you have ambition, if you have some kind of purpose in your life and you go for it, go for the throat, that you make that your mission in life, women will be a complement to that, because they want to be a part of a worthy man's life. They want to be a part. They want to be associated with it. Why? Well, there's the hypergamous side of that, which is she wants to be and mate with and breed with and have a good life with a guy who optimizes hypergamy. That's one. The second side of that is that there's an ego affirmation that comes, affirmation, ego affirmation that comes with that. So what that means is that a woman believe. When we talk about hypergamy, I always say that that hypergamy doesn't seek its own level. Well, what happens when a woman actually gets with a guy who she sees as above her own level? This is why egalitarian relationships are nonsense. When she sees a guy who is above her, she looks up to him, she admires that guy. That says to her hindbrain, to her friends, to her ego, this is the kind of guy I can get. This guy is really high value, so I must be at least somewhat high value to get this guy's attention, to have this guy actually consider me for intimacy and breeding and having babies with, or and living with, and having a life with, starting a family with. I feel reaffirmed, or affirmation, because I'm with a guy who's above me. When we were talking about the idea of women who would say, was it, I want a guy who is economically attractive. They're complaining that they can't find a marriageable guy, and all this pretense of love and honor, and all the lovey-dovey emotional Disney crap, all of that stuff goes out the window, because the primary incentive to get married is a guy who, according to research, makes 58% more than she does. That would make him 58% more makes you an equal, right? You can be in an egalitarian marriage if you make 58% more. Now, what I always say is this: is that a woman cannot look up to a guy if he is her equal. So you've got to be above her. You've got to be the guy who is the decision maker. You've got to be the guy who she looks to for those decisions. How you arrange that is up to you. Again, you can do the Tate style, or you can do, you can do my style, right? I mean, I have one wife, I have one kid, and that's the way it has always been in my situation, my marriage, is that, my wife always expected me to be in the driver's seat. She expected me to be an alpha male. She expected me to be the guy that she wanted to, she would actually have a child with and live for the rest of her life with. So finding a woman like that, yeah, that's the trick. And that's probably the topic for a whole nother show. But how do you find that? How do you get that? Well, like Tate was saying, is that you don't just find that. It's not just something, a relationship's not something you find, it's something that you make. And so I'll save that topic for another show. Maybe we'll get into that on Wednesday. We'll see. And then, so that was that. Disco God. I love that name. Oh, by the way, I need to put the call out. I don't know if YOLO is in the chat right now. YOLO, will you please email me? You can email me at rtrationalmail@gmail.com. I got something I need to talk to you about. So if you are watching this, please email me, and then I'll let you in on what's going on. Let's see. Disco God. If she isn't screwing you, she sees you as a friend. Dump and start over with someone new. Kill the beta. That is the most efficient way. I was going to tell Pat that before he left. Is one of the reasons why I tell guys, when in the Reconstruction, I say you need to break up with your wife. Break up with her up in your head, but break up with her. And then once you become the guy that you know that you can be, then revisit that and say, is she, knowing what I know about her and who I am now, is that something that I want to still maintain? Do I still want to get in that? Am I ever going to be believable as the new guy that I want to be? In some cases, that, unfortunately, in some cases, that might be no. That woman might be like, oh, I've seen this all before. Screw you, and they don't have any really incentive to do anything different, because they're going to make money off the divorce or off the split up, or, child custody, all that. The incentives. I'm talking about things from a married perspective. It might necessarily, if you have a girlfriend, it's easy. You just break up with a girlfriend and move on, because you're never going to be that guy, because she will never see you as anything other than the beta that she got with in the first place. So that might be the case. So if that's the case, cut your losses. Yes, exactly what you just said. It's better to, was Iron Roll Tomasi number 7, never root through garbage after you've dragged the trash can to the curb. Because it is time better spent for you to develop new options, new women, than it is to try to fix something that's probably not going to be able to be fixed, because she's never going to see you as anything other than what you have been, not not what you are now, not what you will become later. She just thinks of you in the terms of, he's a beta chump and I'm stuck with him. Well, you know what? Unstuck that whole situation and get out. Yes, I'll be the first one to say, like, people, I think what's interesting is when I get criticism from particularly trad cons, but I get criticism from people who are sort of throwing out the Dr. Phil Book of Oprah, advice. It's always, well, you got to stay in the relationship. You got to make it work. It's relationships are hard work. You're never going to, we're going to make this work. I don't care what the hell it takes. It doesn't matter if I have to sacrifice my own, well-being and everything else. I'm just going to, it's everything for that commitment. And I've talked about the paradox of commitment before, but there's guys who will just stick it out because they think that that's their goal, that's their quest. And those are the nice guys. Those are the guys who will try to make everything work at all costs. And so when I was talking before about the guys who are convinced that they're the terminal nice guys, they're never going to believe anything other than what they've been conditioned by the blue pill to believe in. You've got those guys, and they're never going to change their minds about anything. Well, I'll be the first one to tell you that, yeah, in some cases you need to break up. In some cases you need to cut your losses and move on, and you might be living a better life as a result of it. Be very careful in doing that. I'm not saying just like, go drink a few beers and go, oh, fucking I'm out, forget it. No, you need to reconsider that. That's why I say, most guys, when they hit me up and they say, I want my wife to have sex with me, how do I have a different relationship than the one I have? Because this is not, I can't live like this anymore. That's why I say break up with her. You have to break up in your head. No, I'm not actually saying, have a talk and say, okay, I'm done with you, but break up with her in your head and become that different person, because that different person will be authentic. Because if you are just changing your behavior and changing your mind about yourself because you want that relationship to be better, it's never going to be genuine, and she'll see right through it. It's like pandering. And not only that, it'll be insulting to her because you're trying to sell yourself as something you're not. And again, existential fear of women. They don't want to be with a guy who is disingenuous. They don't want to be with a guy who they think is alpha and you're actually really beta. Well, the opposite is true. They don't want to be with a guy who's actually beta and trying to sell himself as if he's alpha. That's insulting. That is actually dangerous from an evolutionary perspective. In women's hindbrain, if you get away with that, she could die. That's the basics of all that. So that's Disco God. Thank you for that. Thank you. Oh, Canadian dollars. So Disco God says again, find a happy medium between nice guy and jerk. No, most guys are doing that right now. They think that that's what they can do. They think they can be, it's what I call the myth of the good guy. The myth of the good guy is that you can be the best of both worlds. You can be the best of alpha seed and beta need. And then that's what you should strive for. That's not believable. When I talk about up the alpha, when I got guys who are like these predominantly beta guys and they try to be alpha, that's not believable to women. If a guy is predominantly alpha and he's very, he's stoic and he's his own man, and a woman has to constantly seek his attention and she has to qualify himself to her, all of that. When that guy is vulnerable, when he just shows a flash of beta, that's endearing to women. Women will love that because they think that, oh, he's only doing that for me, right? But if it's the opposite, if a guy is predominantly beta and he's very, oh, I'll do anything for you, baby, you're the one for me. Let me close that off. Thank you. That's when you are not believable. And in fact, a guy who is beta and he's trying to give you that flash of alpha, that's insulting to women. That's dangerous for women because he's being somebody he's not. And your friends will do that too. Remember that when your friends tell you, stop being someone you're not, or that's out of character for you. That's the first thing anybody says when they unplug from the red pill, or excuse me, when they unplug from the matrix and they become red pill aware and they change their life as a result of that. The first thing their friends will say is, you're just trying to be somebody you're not. You're a poser. You stop that. That's not who you are, dude. I know who you are. The reason they say that is because they want you to be predictable. They want you to fit into that because they can control. Well, in some cases they can control you, but human beings need to see regularity, routine. They need to. We're really good at pattern recognition. Human beings, and as a species, we're good at pattern recognition. And we like that order. We like to know what we're going to get with you. And so we want to see that consistency in personality. That's why I have a really tough time with Myers-Briggs, because it pigeonholes guys into being just, or well, women too, just being one way or another. And personality, if you know anything about personality studies or even in behaviorism, whatever, there's no such thing as a static personality. You're not going to be the same person you were. I'm not the same. I am definitely not the same person I was when I was 21 or 31. I'm certainly not that same guy anymore. Yeah, I still have my talents. I still have the things that make me who I am. But if you would have known me right during my BPD years with my BPD ex, you would have wrote me off like a lot of other people did too. Yeah, so what I was going to say is that there's that genuineness, there's that authenticity that goes along with that. And it's easier to believe a guy who's predominantly alpha, who becomes a little bit beta in the moment as a result of something, as a consequence, like maybe your dad died or your dog died, or those are just examples. And you show a little bit of that. It plays into women's instinct or their intuition, like feminine intuition. Oh, he really does love me. It's that Beauty and the Beast thing. He's a beast to everybody except for me. I'm the one that brings it out. I'm Jane and he's Tarzan, and he's so wild and crazy and he's just so fun to be with, and I love having sex with him. But like every once in a while he'll show his nice side, and that, oh, I love it. It's so great, But then he goes back to being Tarzan again. That's believable. Now switch that around, and if he's this, sort of doormat beta, and he decides, oh, I'm going to be an alpha today, it sounds like a little kid going, you're not do what I want to do, right? So that's not believable. So you've got to find, first of all, you got to decide whether or not that relationship is something that you want to maintain. Usually it's not, because your change in character is not going to be believable. Okay, Sam is telling me I have 29 super chats. Look through them and see all of them. I think I got to everyone, didn't I? I'm pretty sure I got to everyone. Sharkman's the last one here, right? Am I getting the right one there? Sharkman says, I've internalized the red pill, but still find myself doing mate guarding behavior. Okay. With my girlfriend, what's the best way to stop this? All right. I've said in the past that mate guarding is sort of a beta male behavior. I think that's kind of circumstantial. I think a lot of guys, like even alpha males, still want to make sure. Here it is. Want to make sure that that the baby is theirs. So this, I think, like when it comes to mate guarding, you have to take it on I think most guys will mate guard at some point. Even alpha males will mate guard. So I can't really say it's a predominantly beta characteristic for a guy to want to mate guard. Most betas are very possessive, or they're very conscious of that. Their gut tells them that their wife or their girlfriend, their wife, whatever, is seeing things on the periphery that are not congruent with that woman's behavior. So if she says, I want to go out on a girls' night out, or we're going to go to Vegas on this weekend, and what do you think of that? Can I go? When she's asking permission. I think I always use this as the mate guarding situation, if you didn't know. Like if you look at, like, say, like if Tate was to be asked that, like I told him in this was in the interview as well. I said, well, why is she asking you that in the first place? Why does she think that that's a good idea? Why does she want to do that? Because if you're a dominant guy, if you're the best she can do, let's just say that if you're the best she can do, that thought doesn't enter into her brain. Her thought is, oh, I'm going to go out with my girlfriends. We're going to go party and go dancing. And, it's just going to be us girls. And no, we won't meet any guys. We won't, we will behave, There's that. A guy who has a scarcity mentality, a guy who is a stereotypical beta male, who is in putting all of his eggs in one basket, like who's putting all of his genetic effort, all of his intimate efforts into keeping that relationship afloat with a woman like that, that guy needs to ask, why is she doing that? Why does she want that? Because it might seem like you control the frame when she asked permission, can I go? I think in that situation, I think someone like, say, like Tate, somebody who is the best she can do, would say, yeah, go ahead. And then, because that's the decision that she's made to go, and she's already made that, she's already there in her brain. If she's coming to you to ask that question, she's already there in her brain. She's already fantasizing about partying with her friends in Vegas, like, and making a big deal out of it, or going on a girls' night out, or whatever, she's dressing in some way, she's already got that concept in her brain. So it seemed like a good idea to her. So what I've always said, and I know a couple of other guys recently were talking about boundaries with respect to women. I don't think boundaries are something that you need to discuss. They're something that you need to exemplify. They're something that you can say, well, you can go do that, but I'll be gone when you come back, or all your shit will be out on the sidewalk when you come back from the girls' night out. You could do that. You could say that. But then you just come down to that level. You just come down to, you're communicating like a woman. Then you're giving her an ultimatum, and then you get into this back and forth where you communicate like a woman with her, because you still believe in egalitarianism, and you still believe that you can have this rational conversation between a man and a woman, because you believe that you both speak the same language, and you don't. So what do you do? Is it more of an alpha male or a bit? No, I think that men, no matter what they are, still have an interest in their own paternity. They want to know that the kid is theirs. They would have to. I mean, that's just how we evolved. We need to know. That's the trade-off. If I'm going to invest, if I'm going to be parentally invested, if I'm going to have sex with you and start a family with you, I need one thing. I'll do all this crap, but I need one thing. I need to know that the kid is mine. That's the paternity. That's the existential fear of men, is that the kid isn't theirs, that she is deceiving him and saying, oh yeah, go ahead, put all your put all your provisioning and effort into this one kid. It's actually not yours. It's this dude's over here because he was a better genetic specimen than you are. But I want you to think that. And I want you to think that it's your duty actually to look after him. That's the existential fear of men, is to have paternity tricked. To have that. Why do men feel jealousy? Well, because, or why do they make guard? Because of that paternity, that need to know paternity. Is she the kind of woman who I can trust to, because that's what it was really based on before we had genetic testing and all this other good stuff. Like back in our ancestral past, it was based on, I need assurances. I need to know that you're mine. I need to be married to you. We need to find some social conventions in where I can verify and make sure that the kid is mine. And so we build up all this behavior, and we build up all these social constructs or conventions, I guess, around that need, that base need. But the evolved need is, why are you mate guarding? Well, there's something in your instinct that is telling you that this woman is in her proliferative phase, and she is looking for somebody that is not you. So that's why guys instinctually will mate guard, or they'll get suspicious. I'm going to go look through her phone. Why are you suspicious? That's the question that you do. Why do you feel like you need to mate guard? That's the question you need to ask. Why are you suspicious? Why do you feel like you want to snoop? Well, because she's giving you cues. Your instinct, your gut. When I talk about gut check, your gut is saying, I need to know for sure if she's the kind of person who will go out, have sex with another guy, get pregnant, and then put me on the hook for that kid. That's the brutal, ugly way of saying that, but that's pretty much true. So what's the best way to stop this? The best way to stop this is get with a woman who has genuine desire for you, who you don't feel that for. I mean, you're always going to feel a little bit of possessiveness. As a guy, you're always going to want to have, like if the waiter at the restaurant is like sort of like coming on to your girlfriend, you're going to be like, you're still going to feel that. Even if you're the most alpha dude in the world, that doesn't preclude a guy who's a competitor who's going to come up. So how do animals do that, right? How do two male animals compete for the attention of a female? Well, if that's what you want to do. But I think the real question is, why do you feel that way? Why is it something that you really feel like you have to overtly make guard? because she's a certain way or because you're just suspicious. Remember, when it comes to mate guarding, when it comes to jealousy, you have to think of those behaviors and those effects and those feelings in terms of instinct, emotion, and reason. So the instinct is, I think she has the potential. I'm suspicious that she has the potential to cheat. She's going to go outside of our pairing, our pairing, and have sex with somebody else, get pregnant, and bring that kid back into our pairing and try to convince me. That's the instinct. That's where we got to guard against, right? The emotional side of that is, oh my God, she really doesn't want me anymore. I can't believe it. There's that emotional side, or there's the anger side. I can't believe that, bitch. There's that emotional in between, and then there's the rational side, and that rational side it is slower, and it takes more it takes longer to learn things, is basically what I'm saying. It's slower, but it can really be valuable to you in a sense. So what are you going to do about it? What's the rational response to that? And a lot of people will take that rational side and say, well, I'm imagining things. That's my instinct, but I'm going to ignore my instinct. That's your rational side that says that, not your emotional side. That's your rational. You rationalize things away and say, well, she's never given me any reason to be suspicious. Why am I suspicious? Okay, I'll just go back to the football game. Or you can be like, okay, why am I feeling this way? What is she doing that is triggering that instinct right now, and how can I use that, and how should I respond to that? And so that's the process you kind of have to understand when it comes to like really heavy emotions like that, when it comes to jealousy, and it comes to anger and those things. Why you're feeling jealousy is the emotional part, right? So why are you feeling that way? What is she doing? Why does she want to do this in the first place? Those are just questions you need to ask yourself. All right, I think I am done. Yeah, Yellow, I saw that email. Thank you, brother. I will get back to you today. Okay, I think that is it for today. It is now 3:26 on the West Coast in sunny Reno, Nevada. And thank you for joining me and Pat Campbell. I got to give Pat his plugs too. You can find Pat on Twitter, and Pat is here at Twitter, at PC1170. He is also the talk show host for in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He has the Pat Campbell Show. You can get that if you want to listen to any of those. They're really a good listen. I mean, a lot of stuff is some of his stuff is, well, I say a lot of his stuff is local, but some of his stuff is political. And then a lot of the stuff, like particularly like I think on Tuesdays, and then of course on Fridays I do a show with him, but he talks about intersexual dynamics and things on his own show, which I'm always fascinated by that show because it's local in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's a terrestrial radio show. And I know what his demographic is for that show. And I think it's always interesting to relate with that. But it is also available on the World Wide Web. If you just go to his Twitter account here, you'll get the link, so you can get the live link for that. I will be on that every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time on Fridays. I will be back again on Wednesday. That will be my next show on this channel. If you have not already got the book, you notice my new overlay here. My book is available on Amazon if you didn't know. If you haven't picked up the book, please do and read it. And if you have new eyes, if you're reading my stuff for the first time, I'm always interested in what fresh eyes to all of this, the opinions and the interpretations and stuff. But a lot of people think that I'm a cult leader. I just run the show and it's my way. There's the Rolo pill, whatever. I've never been like that. And if you read my first books, if you read the introduction to actually my first and my second books, I say, look, if you think that I'm full of shit, I want to know about it. Hit me up in an email, tell me on any of the comment threads if it's about a topic that I've written on my blog, which you can find right here. That's where I'm at. Yeah, tell me, please. I want to have a dialogue. One of the reasons why I was very resistant to go from a forum of like SoSwap to a blog format is because I felt like I was going to lose some of that engagement. I like to have discussions about this stuff. I can't connect dots if I'm not having other people saying, hey, here's a dot, check this out. I need you to tell me those things. So I'm always open to discussion, debate, whatever you want to about anything that I've discussed on this show or anything else. So please do. Also, let's see. So Wednesday, I am working on getting an interview with Joshua Flake. I don't know if you guys know who Joshua is. He's got his own YouTube channel. He's kind of not in the manosphere, but he has read my books, and he went through a pretty rough divorce. And a lot of people were saying they wanted me to do a case study of him, similar to what I did with Tech Lead, Pat from Tech Lead. And then I listened to it. I listened to the whole video that he was talking about, and I thought, you know what? I'd rather talk to the guy. I'd rather have a one-on-one with him instead of like make it seem like I'm just tearing him apart. And I don't want to do that, particularly since a lot of people suggested my work to him during that time. So I want to talk to him if I can work that out. And Josh, if you're watching, I definitely want you on Wednesday. So so we can talk about that. There's a lot to unpack in your situation, and you're a young guy too. So that also interests me. You're part of not the millennial generation so much as you are Gen Z. So be nice to get that going. So let me know about that on Wednesday. Wednesday show will be at 6 p.m. Eastern, as always. So watch out for that. If you haven't seen the Tate interview that I did on Friday, you definitely want to rewind and go back. And it's the video before or 2 videos back. I did Rule Zero. I hosted Rule Zero, which was actually a very excellent show. Go ahead and have a look at that. That is every Saturday morning at 11:30 Eastern time, 8:30 Pacific time. So if you have not bought the book, please do. If you haven't bought the audio, please do what you're supposed to. Sub to the channel, please. It really helps me out. Also, if you want to contribute or donate to this show or show your appreciation in any way, all of the donation, I have Patreon, I have PayPal, I have a basic donation site or a donation page that's on my my blog, which is a charity for Greyhound Rescue, because as everybody knows, I've been into reconditioning and fostering retired and often injured greyhounds for it'll be 10 years. Gosh, man, I started in 2010 were my first 2 grays, and then I just fell in love with the breed, and I just started doing what I do right now. If you want to contribute to that, that's one way you can certainly show me appreciation. The other thing is, if you haven't done so already, consider leaving a positive review on any of the books, the ones that you like the best. That always helps me out a lot. And then last but not least, share this link, share the URL, pass it on. If you have a print book, buy a print book and pass it on. So it makes a pretty good gift. If there's somebody that you think can use this material, that they're at a point in their life where they're ready to listen to it, buy. It's a cheap book, man. It's only like $9.99. I think maybe it's up a little. Maybe it's like $10.44 now. I deliberately kept it at the lowest price that I possibly could that Amazon would sell it for, because I want the message out there. I want people to talk about this. I'm like I said, I'm a bottom up kind of guy. I want to make sure that each one tell one kind of thing, and I think it's more personal. That's how you change minds, is one at a time, not from the pulpit, and not from not from above, but from right here on the ground with the rest of you. So from right here on the ground. Thank you guys for following me, and I will see you guys on Wednesday. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.